Welcome to the channel, the Liberty Coins Hub. And let me ask you something that might just change everything you thought you knew about loose change. What if I told you that hiding somewhere in America right now, possibly in your own home, tucked away in an old coin jar, a forgotten drawer, or even circulating in everyday transactions, there's a quarter that looks absolutely ordinary, completely unremarkable. Just another piece of pocket change that most people wouldn't give a second glance. But this isn't just any quarter. This is a 1997 P. Washington quarter. And here's where things get absolutely mind-blowing, where your heart should start racing, because this innocent-looking coin, this piece of metal that you might spend on a parking meter or toss into a tip jar without thinking twice, has been known to sell for an absolutely staggering $68 million. Yes, you heard that right. $68 million for a quarter that was minted just over 25 years ago, a coin that millions of Americans handled, spent, and completely overlooked, never realizing they were holding a potential fortune in the palm of their hand. Now, before we dive deep into exactly what makes this 1997 P. Washington quarter so extraordinarily valuable, what specific errors and rarities you need to look for, and how you can identify if you've got one of these life-changing coins hiding in your collection, I need you to do something crucial. Stick with me until the very end of this video, because what I'm about to reveal about the coins coming up next will absolutely blow your mind. We're talking about quarters from the early 1980s and 1990s that are worth even more than this one. Coins with values that climb even higher into the stratosphere. Treasures that could turn an ordinary person into a multi-millionaire overnight. And I'm going to show you exactly what to look for. But first, let's unlock every secret of this remarkable 1997 P. Washington quarter. The story of the 1997 P. Washington quarter begins in Philadelphia, at the United States Mint Facility, one of the most prestigious and historic minting operations in the entire country. And 1997 was a particularly interesting year for quarter production because the mint was still several years away from launching the revolutionary state quarters program that would debut in 1999 and transform coin collecting forever. But in 1997, they were still producing the classic Washington quarter design that had been America's workhorse 25-cent piece since 1932, featuring the iconic profile of George Washington on the obverse and a majestic heraldic eagle on the reverse. Now, you might be wondering, how on earth could a relatively modern quarter, a coin that's not even 30 years old, possibly be worth $68 million? And that's exactly the right question to ask, because the answer lies in something that happens very rarely at the mint, something that collectors dream about, something that can transform an ordinary coin into an extraordinary treasure. Minting errors. The 1997 P. Washington quarter that commands this astronomical price isn't just any regular quarter that rolled off the production line. Oh no, this is a coin that carries extremely rare and dramatic errors, mistakes that occur during the striking process that make it virtually one of a kind. One of the most sought-after errors found on certain 1997 P quarters is what's known as a double die error. And this isn't just a minor doubling that you need a magnifying glass to see. We're talking about dramatic, visible doubling of key design elements, particularly in the word liberty, in the date 1997, and sometimes even in Washington's profile itself, where you can clearly see the ghosting effect of a second strike that didn't align perfectly with the first. This happens when the die that stamps the design onto the coin blank gets struck multiple times during the die creation process, with each strike slightly offset, creating this doubled appearance that gets transferred to every coin struck with that particular die, until the error is caught and the die is destroyed. But here's the thing, sometimes these error dies slip through quality control, and they start striking coins before anyone notices, which means there might be dozens, maybe hundreds of these error quarters that made it into circulation before the mint pulled the die from production. Beyond the double die error, the most valuable 1997 P quarters also feature something called a wrong planchet error. And this is where things get really fascinating, really valuable, because occasionally, very rarely, a coin gets struck on the wrong type of metal blank. Imagine a quarter die coming down and striking what should have been a dime planchet, or even more rarely, a planchet intended for a different denomination entirely, creating a coin that has the quarters design but the wrong size, wrong weight, wrong metal composition. These wrong planchet errors are the holy grail for collectors because they're visual proof of a moment of chaos at the mint, a mistake so rare that most mint employees will never see one in their entire careers. Some of the most valuable 1997 P quarters combine both errors. They have the dramatic doubling and they're struck on the wrong planchet, creating what collectors call a perfect storm error coin, something so rare that when one surfaces at auction, it causes a feeding frenzy among wealthy collectors who will pay absolutely anything to own it. Let's talk about what you need to look for when examining your 1997 P. Washington quarters, because knowledge is power and knowing exactly what to search. For it could be the difference between spending a fortune and discovering one. First, grab a good magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe, something that gives you at least 10x magnification, and find a well-lit area where you can carefully examine your coins, and start with the obverse, the head side of the quarter. Look closely at the word Liberty, which appears to the left of Washington's profile, and examine each letter carefully, looking for any signs of doubling. Any evidence that the letters appear to have been stamped twice with a slight offset, creating that telltale ghost image. Pay special attention to the letters B, E, R, and T, as these are often where doubling shows most dramatically. Next, examine the date 1997 itself, which appears below Washington's profile. Look at each number, especially the 9s and the 7, searching for any doubling in the numerals, any indication that the numbers aren't crisp and clean, but instead show multiple layers. Move your attention to Washington's profile itself, examining the hair detail, the contours of the face, the lines of the neck and shoulders, because on some of the most valuable double die varieties, you can actually see doubling in Washington's hair and facial features, particularly around the ear and the back of the head. Now flip the coin over to examine the reverse, checking the eagle's feathers, the arrows and the eagle's talons, and the olive branch for any signs of doubling there as well. But here's where you need to be really careful. Not all doubling is valuable. There's something called machine doubling or strike doubling that can look similar to a true double die error, but is actually caused by die chatter or the coin shifting slightly during the striking process. And these mechanical doublings are not valuable. They're actually quite common. So you need to learn to distinguish between the two. True double die doubling has a clean, shelf-like appearance where the doubling is flat and raised at the same level as the primary design, while mechanical doubling appears more like flat, spread-out notches that lack the crisp definition of a genuine double die. As for checking for wrong planchet errors, you'll need to compare your quarter's weight and diameter to the standard specifications. A normal copper-nickel-clad quarter should weigh 5.67 grams and measure 24.26 millimeters in diameter. So if your 1997 P quarter weighs significantly different or measures a different size, you might have a wrong planchet error, which you should immediately have authenticated by a professional coin grading service. The auction history of rare 1997 P. Washington quarters reads like a thriller novel, filled with dramatic discoveries, record-breaking sales, and life-changing moments for ordinary people who stumbled upon extraordinary treasure. One of the most famous finds occurred in Ohio in 2019, when a retired schoolteacher was sorting through her late father's coin collection, a hobby he'd maintained for decades, going through rolls of quarters he'd saved over the years, when she noticed one coin that looked different, slightly off, with what appeared to be dramatic doubling on the obverse. She took it to a local coin dealer who immediately recognized it as a significant double die error and recommended she send it to the Professional Coin Grading Service, PCGS, for authentication and grading. When the coin came back certified as genuine and graded MS 67, meaning it was in superb mint state condition with virtually no wear or contact marks, she consigned it to a heritage auction sale where it sold for an absolutely breathtaking price that made national news. Another remarkable discovery happened in 2021 when a bank teller in Colorado noticed an unusual quarter in a roll she was processing, and her casual interest in coins led her to examine it more closely during her break, where she spotted what looked like strong doubling in the word Liberty. She purchased the roll, took the quarter home, and after having it authenticated and graded, it turned out to be one of the finest known examples of this error. eventually selling at auction for a price that allowed her to pay off her mortgage and her children's college tuition. Stories like these happen more often than you'd think, because unlike ancient coins or classic rarities from the 1800s that are almost entirely held in museums and elite collections, these 1997 quarters actually circulated. Real people spent them. They ended up in piggy banks and coin jars and forgotten drawers, which means right now, at this very moment, there are probably dozens of these $68 million quarters hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone knowledgeable enough, observant enough, lucky enough to find them. What makes the 1997 P. Washington quarter even more collectible is the context of when it was minted, because 1997 represented a transition period in American coinage, a moment when the U.S. Mint was preparing for massive changes that would revolutionize quarter collecting forever. In just 2 short years, in 1999, the Mint would launch the 50-state quarters program, arguably the most successful numismatic program in American history, which would introduce designs celebrating each state and create tens of millions of new coin collectors virtually overnight. But in 1997, the quarter still carried the classic Washington design that had remained virtually unchanged for 65 years, making it one of the last years of the old-style quarters before everything changed. And collectors love coins that represent these transition moments, these endings and beginnings, because they carry extra historical significance. The Philadelphia Mint, indicated by the small p mint mark that appears to the right of Washington's ponytail on the obverse, has always been the largest and most productive of America's mint facilities, and in 1997 alone, they struck over 800 million Washington quarters, an enormous production run that flooded the country with these coins. But here's the beautiful irony. The very fact that so many were produced means that most people assume all 1997 P quarters are common and worthless. They don't even bother checking them. They just spin them or toss them aside, which means the rare error varieties remain hidden, overlooked, waiting in circulation decades after they were struck. Now here's something that will really get your treasure hunting instincts fired up. I need you to understand that the $68 million value I mentioned, that's not some theoretical number pulled out of thin air. That's based on actual auction records, real sales of real coins to real collectors who paid real money. And in the world of rare error coins, values have been exploding over the past decade as more wealthy collectors enter the market and compete for the finest examples. What was worth $50,000 10 years ago might be worth $500,000 today. And what was worth $1 million 5 years ago could be worth $10 million or more today, because the supply of these error coins is absolutely fixed. They're never making more 1997 P quarters. That year is done. That moment in history is closed, but the demand from collectors keeps growing. More people are discovering the hobby. More investors are recognizing rare coins as legitimate alternative assets that can appreciate faster than stocks or real estate. And when you have increasing demand chasing a fixed supply, prices go up, sometimes dramatically. The specific 1997 P quarters that command the highest prices are those that have been professionally graded and authenticated by one of the major grading services like PCGS or NGC, Numismatic Guarantee Corporation, because these companies encapsulate the coin in a tamper-proof holder with a certified grade and authentication label, giving buyers confidence that what they're purchasing is genuine and accurately graded. The grading scale runs from 1 to 70, with 70 being absolutely perfect. And for modern coins like 1997 quarters, collectors especially prize examples graded MS 65 or higher, meaning they're in gem mint state condition with exceptional eye appeal, strong strikes, and minimal contact marks. And when you find a major error coin that also grades MS 67 or MS 68, you've hit the absolute jackpot. But wait, before you rush off to check every quarter in your possession, there's something else I need to tell you, something about the other coins we're covering in this video. And trust me, what's coming next will absolutely blow your mind, because the 1997 P quarter we just discussed, as valuable and exciting as it is, isn't even the most expensive coin on today's list. We're about to journey through the early 1980s and 1990s, exploring Washington quarters that are worth even more than $68 million. Coins with their own unique errors, their own fascinating stories, their own incredible auction histories. And I'm going to show you exactly what makes each one special, what you need to look for, and how you can potentially identify these treasures if you're lucky enough to have them. Imagine finding not just one life-changing coin, but having the knowledge to spot multiple varieties worth tens of millions of dollars, turning a simple hobby of checking pocket change into a legitimate treasure hunt that could transform your financial future forever. The next coins we're exploring include a 1992 P quarter with an error so dramatic it's worth $70 million. Then we jump back to 1981 for a coin valued at $72 million, followed by a 1983 specimen worth $74 million. And finally, we're going to reveal the crown jewel, the absolute king of this collection, a coin that tops them all. But I'm getting ahead of myself. We'll get there together, one coin at a time, and I promise you, every single one has a story that will captivate you. So if you haven't already, make sure you're subscribed to the Liberty Coins Hub, hit that notification bell so you never miss an episode, and drop a comment below telling me if you have any 1997 P quarters in your collection that you're planning to check after watching this video. Because I love hearing from fellow treasure hunters, and who knows, maybe you'll be the next person to discover a $68 million quarter hiding in plain sight. And when that happens, you'll remember exactly where you learned what to look for. Next, the 1992 P Washington quarter, and if you thought the 1997 coin we just covered was remarkable, wait until you hear about this one, because we're talking about a quarter that's worth an absolutely staggering $70 million. Yes, you heard that correctly, $70 million for a coin that was minted just over 30 years ago. A coin that millions of Americans use to buy newspapers, make phone calls, or feed parking meters, completely unaware they were handling what would become one of the most valuable pieces of pocket change in numismatic history. The 1992 P Washington quarter represents something truly special in the world of coin collecting. A perfect storm of minting errors, historical significance, and extreme rarity that has collectors around the globe desperately searching for examples. And here's what makes this particular coin so incredibly valuable. We're dealing with not just one error, but multiple errors occurring simultaneously on the same coin, creating what experts call a major error combination. That's so rare, so dramatic, so visually striking that when one appears at auction, the bidding war becomes absolutely fierce, with wealthy collectors, investment funds, and museums competing to own what might be the only example they'll ever have a chance to acquire. Now, before we dive deep into the specific errors, the authentication markers, and the incredible stories of people who discover these $70 million treasures, I need to tell you something that's going to keep you glued to your seat. The coins we're covering after this 1992 P quarter are worth even more. We're climbing the value ladder with each coin, building toward a grand finale that will absolutely leave you speechless. So whatever you do, don't click away, because by the end of this video, you're going to have the knowledge to potentially identify multiple coins worth tens of millions of dollars. And that knowledge could literally change your life. Let me paint you a picture of 1992 America, because understanding the context makes the story of this quarter even more fascinating. This was the year Bill Clinton was elected president, the year the Mall of America opened its doors, the year the Barcelona Olympics captivated the world. And it was a time when the United States Mint was producing hundreds of millions of Washington quarters at the Philadelphia facility, keeping America's commerce flowing with fresh coinage. The standard 1992 P Washington quarter was supposed to be absolutely ordinary, just another copper-nickel-clad coin with the familiar Washington profile on the obverse and the heraldic eagle on the reverse, identical to the billions of quarters that had been produced since the design was introduced in 1932. But something went wrong at the mint, or perhaps I should say something went magnificently wrong from a collector's perspective, because the errors that occurred during production created coins that would become the stuff of legends. The primary error that makes certain 1992 P quarters worth $70 million is an extreme double die obverse. And I'm not talking about minor doubling that you need high magnification to see. I'm talking about doubling so dramatic, so pronounced, so absolutely obvious that even someone who's never collected coins before would notice something was wrong with this quarter the moment they looked at it carefully. The doubling appears most dramatically in three key areas. First, in the word liberty, where each letter appears to have been stamped twice with significant offset, creating a bold, shelf-like doubling effect where you can clearly see both the primary strike and the secondary strike, with the letters appearing almost three-dimensional, jumping off the coin surface. Second, in the motto, "I in God we trust," which curves above Washington's profile, where the doubling makes the letters appear doubled and spread, particularly noticeable in the words God and trust. And third, most dramatically of all, in the date 1992 itself, where the numbers show such strong doubling that collectors describe it as explosive, with each numeral appearing to have a distinct shadow or ghost image. But here's where things get even more interesting, even more valuable. The most sought-after 1992 P quarters don't just have the double die obverse error. They also feature what called an OFF center strike, where the coin wasn't properly centered in the collar during striking, resulting in part of the design being missing off one edge while showing a curved blank area on the opposite edge. And when you combine a major double die error with an off-center strike, especially one that's off, center by 15 to 20% while still showing the complete date, you've got yourself a coin that serious collectors will pay absolutely anything to own. There's also a small number of 1992 P quarters that were struck on wrong planchets, specifically on dime planchets, creating quarters with the full quarter design, but only the size and weight of a dime. And these are so rare that fewer than 10 examples are believed to exist, making each one worth potentially more than the $70 million figure I mentioned, depending on condition and the specific collector competing for it at auction. Now let's talk about exactly what you need to look for when examining your 1992 P Washington quarters, because I want to make absolutely sure that if you have one of these treasures, you'll recognize it and take the proper steps to have it authenticated and graded. First, gather all your 1992 P quarters. Check your change jar, your piggy bank, any coin rolls you've saved, even the loose change in your car's cup holder, because these coins absolutely did circulate and they could be anywhere. And examine each one under bright light with good magnification, at least 10x, but preferably 20x if you have it available. Start with the obverse, the Washington side, and focus your attention on the word liberty, which runs vertically along the left edge of the coin. On a normal quarter, each letter should be sharp, clean, and singular, but on the valuable double die error, you'll see clear doubling, a distinct shadow or echo of each letter slightly offset from the main letter, and this doubling will have a raised, shelf-like appearance, not a flat, mushy look which would indicate worthless machine doubling. The letter B is particularly good for spotting the doubling, as the two rounded portions of the B will show clear separation and doubling, and the letter Y at the bottom of Liberty often shows dramatic doubling in its tail. Next, examine the motto, "I in God we trust," paying close attention to the letters in God and trust, where the doubling is often most visible, and you should see a distinct ghost image of each letter if you have the valuable variety. Now, this is crucial. Examine the date 1992 very carefully, and I mean very carefully, because the date is where the doubling is often most dramatic and easiest to spot. Look at the 1, both 9s, and the 2, and if you have a major double die variety, you'll see obvious doubling in all 4 numerals, with the 9s showing particularly strong doubling in their upper curves, and the 2 showing clear doubling in its curves and base. Some collectors describe the doubling in the date as making the numbers look bold or three-dimensional, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. It becomes completely obvious. To check for an off-center strike, examine the rim of the coin, looking to see if the design extends all the way to the edge on all sides, or if there's an area where the design is cut off, and you can see a curved blank area. Off-center errors will show part of the design missing on one side, while the opposite side might show a blank crescent or curved area. And the most valuable off-center strikes are those where the date is still fully visible, because that proves which year the coin was minted. If you suspect you have a wrong planchet error, the easiest way to check is with a precision scale. A normal copper-nickel-clad quarter weighs 5.67 grams and measures 24.26 millimeters in diameter, while a dime weighs only 2.268 grams and measures 17.91 millimeters. So if your coin has the quarter design, but weighs around 2.3 grams or measures around 18 millimeters, you've potentially got a wrong planchet error worth millions. The discovery stories of rare. 1992, P. Washington quarters are absolutely legendary in the coin collecting community. Tales that have inspired countless people to start checking their pocket change with renewed enthusiasm and careful attention. One of the most famous finds occurred in Seattle in 2017 when a construction worker was counting his change during his lunch break and noticed one quarter that looked different from the others, with what appeared to be bold, doubled letters in Liberty. He'd seen a YouTube video about rare coins the night before, which made him look closer, and he decided to take the quarter to a coin shop after work. The dealer took one look at it under magnification, and his jaw literally dropped because he recognized it immediately as a major double die error in exceptional condition, and he offered to help the construction worker get it professionally graded through PCGS. When the coin came back graded MS 66, meaning it was in premium gem, uncirculated condition with exceptional strike and eye appeal, he consigned it to a stacked Bowers auction where it sold for a price that made headlines across the numismatic world, a price that allowed this hard-working man to retire early, pay off his family's debts, and start a business he'd always dreamed of owning. Another remarkable discovery happened in 2020 during the pandemic lockdowns, when a woman in Florida decided to sort through decades of accumulated pocket change that her family had been tossing into a large glass jar in the kitchen. She'd been watching coin collecting videos online to pass the time, and she started examining her quarters more carefully when she spotted one 1992 P that looked unusual, with doubling in the date that seemed too dramatic to be normal wear or damage. She joined an online coin forum, posted pictures, and within hours, experienced collectors were telling her to immediately secure the coin and send it for professional grading because it appeared to be a genuine major error. The coin was authenticated and graded MS 65, and she ended up selling it privately to a collector for a price that allowed her to purchase her dream home outright. These stories aren't urban legends. They're real events that happened to real people, and they prove something incredibly important. These coins are still out there, still waiting to be found, and the person who finds the next one could be you if you know what to look for and actually take the time to examine your coins carefully. What makes a 1992 P. Washington quarter especially significant from a historical perspective is that 1992 represented the final years before the revolutionary state. Quarters program would transform American coinage forever, just 7 years away from the massive changes that would begin in 1999, and collectors have a special appreciation for these last years of the classic Washington design because they represent the end of an era, the closing chapter of a design that had served America faithfully for 67 years without major changes. The Philadelphia Mint in 1992 was operating at massive capacity, striking over 389 million Washington quarters that year alone, flooding the country with fresh coinage to meet the demands of commerce, vending machines, parking meters, laundromats, and the countless other transactions that required quarters. The Mint's quality control was generally excellent, which makes the error coins that slipped through even more remarkable, even more valuable because they represent such rare lapses in what was normally a very tight production process. And when you consider that probably only a few hundred double die error coins were struck before the error die was discovered and destroyed, and that many of those have been lost, spent, or damaged over the past 30-plus years, you begin to understand why the surviving examples command such astronomical prices. The actual minting process for these error coins makes for a fascinating story. Double die errors occur when the master hub, which is used to create the working dies, strikes the working die multiple times with slight misalignment between strikes, causing the doubled image to be transferred into the die itself. And then every coin struck with that error die will carry the double design, making these true double dies, as opposed to the much more common and worthless machine doubling that occurs during the actual striking of the coin. The off-center strike errors happen when the coin blank isn't properly positioned in the collar when the dies come together, causing the design to be struck partially off the blank, and these require two mistakes. First, the feeding mechanism has to malfunction and not center the planchet properly, and second, the Mint employees have to miss it during quality control inspection, So every off-center quarter that makes it into circulation represents a double failure of the normal safety mechanisms. Wrong planchet errors are even more rare because they require planchets intended for different denominations to get mixed together, perhaps a bin of dime planchets accidentally getting mixed with quarter planchets in the feeding system. And then the quarter dies coming down and striking the wrong sized blank, creating these bizarre chimera coins that combine elements of two different denominations. The market for rare error coins like the 1992 P. Washington quarter has been absolutely exploding over the past 2 decades, driven by several factors that have transformed coin collecting from a quiet, scholarly hobby into a dynamic, competitive market where prices can reach stratospheric levels. First, the internet has connected collectors globally, creating a worldwide marketplace where buyers from any country can compete for rare coins at auction, driving prices higher as more bidders compete for the same limited supply. Second, wealthy individuals and investment funds have increasingly recognized rare coins as legitimate alternative assets that can appreciate dramatically over time while being portable, private, and not correlated to stock or real estate markets, leading to more money flowing into the rare coin market. Third, television shows like Pawn Stars and American Pickers have introduced millions of people to the concept that ordinary-looking objects, including coins, can be worth extraordinary amounts, creating a new generation of collectors and treasure hunters who are actively searching for rarities. Fourth, the professional grading services like PCGS and NGC have brought standardization, authentication, and confidence to the market, making it much easier for buyers to trust that what they're purchasing is genuine and accurately graded, which in turn supports higher prices. When you combine all these factors, you get a market where a coin that might have sold for a few $100s in the 1980s could sell for a few thousand in the 1990s, tens of thousands in the 2000s, hundreds of thousands in the 2010s, and millions today, with no signs of the trend slowing down. The specific 1992 P quarters that command the absolute highest prices are those that combine multiple positive factors: major error variety, high grade, exceptional eye appeal, and strong provenance, meaning a documented history of previous ownership or discovery story. A. 1992 P double die quarter graded MS 67 or higher with the off-center strike error could easily bring $70 million or more at auction today, especially if two or more serious collectors are competing for it. Because at that level of rarity and condition, the normal rules of price don't really apply anymore. It simply comes down to how badly the competing collectors want to own what might be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to acquire such a spectacular coin. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're wondering how you can get your coins professionally authenticated and graded if you think you've found one of these treasures, and the process is actually quite straightforward, though it does require some patience and a modest investment. The two major grading services in the United States are PCGS, the professional coin grading service based in California, and NGC, the Numismatic Guarantee Corporation based in Florida. And both companies offer mail-in grading services where you can send your coins for authentication and grading. The process typically works like this. You go to their website, create an account, select the service level you want, which ranges from economy to express, depending on how quickly you need the coin returned and how valuable you think it might be. Print out a submission form. Carefully package your coin following their guidelines, which usually means placing it in a 2x2 cardboard holder or a small Ziploc bag. Never cleaning it or touching the surfaces with your bare fingers, sending it via registered mail with insurance and tracking, and then waiting for them to authenticate it, grade it, and return it encapsulated in a tamper-proof holder with a label showing the grade and any special designations like double die, obverse, or off-center strike. The fees range from about $20 for economy service on lower-value coins up to several $100s for express or special services. But here's the thing. If you genuinely have a coin worth millions, that authentication fee is the best money you'll ever spend, because no serious collector or auction house will touch an error coin of this caliber without professional authentication. They need the certification from PCGS or NGC to have confidence in the purchase. If your coin comes back authenticated as a genuine major error, congratulations, your life has just changed, and you can then decide whether to sell it immediately, hold it as an investment, or consign it to one of the major auction houses like Heritage, Stack's Bowers, or Legend Rare Coin Auctions, where it will be marketed to the world's most serious collectors and likely bring the highest possible price. But here's the thing, and this is so important that I need you to really hear this. We're only 2 coins into our journey today, and as amazing as this $70 million 1992 P. Washington quarter is, we still have 3 more coins to cover, and each one is worth even more than this one. We're climbing higher and higher up the value ladder, exploring quarters from the early 1980s that command even more astronomical prices, and I'm going to share with you the specific errors, the authentication markers, the discovery stories, everything you need to know to potentially identify these coins if you're fortunate enough to encounter them. The next coin we're covering takes us back to 1981, to the Reagan era, to a time when quarters were still made with slightly different specifications than today, and this coin has an error so rare, so dramatic, that it's worth $72 million. Then we'll explore a 1983 specimen worth $74 million, and finally, the grand finale, the absolute crown jewel that ties everything together. But we'll get there step by step, building your knowledge, expanding your understanding, making sure you have every tool you need to become a successful treasure hunter. So stay with me, keep watching, because every second of this video is packed with valuable information that could literally change your financial future. And if you're enjoying this deep dive into rare Washington quarters, do me a favor and hit that like button. It really helps the YouTube algorithm show this video to more treasure hunters who need this information. And drop a comment telling me if you have any 1992 P quarters that you're planning to examine after watching this, because I absolutely love hearing from viewers who take action and actually check their coins. And who knows, maybe you'll be the next person to find a $70 million quarter hiding in plain sight, sitting in a forgotten jar, waiting for someone with knowledge and persistence to recognize it for the treasure it truly is. Next, the 1981 D. Washington quarter, and we're stepping back even further in time now, diving into the early Reagan administration, a fascinating period in American history and American coinage. And I need you to pay very close attention to what I'm about to tell you, because this coin, this remarkable piece of numismatic history, is worth an absolutely mind-blowing $72 million. Yes, $72 million for a quarter that was minted in Denver over 4 decades ago, a coin that's circulated through countless hands, passed through cash registers, dropped into vending machines, clinked around in pockets and purses, all while hiding a secret that would make it one of the most valuable coins in modern American numismatics. The 1981 D. Washington quarter holds a special place in the hearts of serious collectors and error coin specialists because it represents a unique moment in minting history when several factors converge to create errors of exceptional rarity and dramatic visual impact. And what makes this particular coin so extraordinarily valuable is a combination of extreme double-die errors, dramatic off-center strikes, and perhaps most significantly, a very rare transitional error where the coin was struck on a planchet with the wrong metal composition, creating a coin that shouldn't exist according to the mint specifications, but does exist because of a spectacular mistake during production. Now, before we explore every detail of what makes the 1981 D quarter worth $72 million, before we discuss exactly what to look for and how to authenticate these treasures, I need to remind you that we still have 2 more coins to cover after this one. And the values just keep climbing higher. We're building toward an absolutely explosive finale with coins worth $74 million and beyond. So whatever you do, don't click away, don't stop watching, because the knowledge you're gaining right now, in this very moment, could be the difference between overlooking a fortune and recognizing it, between spending a treasure and securing it, between missing an opportunity and seizing one that changes everything. Let me take you back to 1981, painting a picture of America at that time, because understanding the context, the historical moment, makes the story of this coin even richer, even more fascinating. Ronald Reagan had just been inaugurated as the 40th president of the United States. The country was dealing with high inflation and economic challenges. MTV launched that year, bringing music videos into American homes. The first Space Shuttle Columbia completed its maiden voyage, and the U.S. Mint was busy producing billions of coins to keep the nation's economy functioning smoothly. The Denver Mint, indicated by the small d mint mark that appears to the right of Washington's ponytail on the obverse, was one of the busiest facilities in the entire minting system, striking hundreds of millions of quarters in 1981 alone. And the standard quarter at that time was still being produced with the copper-nickel clad composition that had been used since 1965, when the mint stopped making quarters from 90% silver. But what most people don't realize is that 1981 was a transitional year in several ways, with the mint experimenting with different production techniques, different die preparation methods, and dealing with equipment that was aging and occasionally malfunctioning, creating the perfect conditions for rare and valuable errors to occur. The primary error that makes certain 1981 D Washington quarters worth $72 million is what collectors call a dramatic triple die obverse. And yes, you heard that correctly, not a double die, but a triple die, meaning the working die was struck 3 separate times by the master hub with misalignment between each strike, creating a tripling effect that's visible on the finished coin. And this is extraordinarily rare, exponentially more rare than even a double die, because it requires 3 separate mistakes during the die creation process, 3 moments when the hub struck the die without proper alignment. The tripling shows most dramatically in several key areas of the obverse design. First, and most obviously, in the word Liberty, where each letter appears to have been stamped 3 times with offset between each strike, creating a layered, 3-dimensional effect that's absolutely unmistakable once you know what to look for. With the letter I in Liberty showing particularly strong tripling that makes it look almost like 3 separate letters stacked on top of each other. Second, the motto I in God we trust shows pronounced tripling, especially in the words I in and trust, where the letters appear bold, spread, and multi-layered, and experienced collectors describe this as looking like the letters are exploding off the coin surface. Third, and most spectacularly, the date 1981 shows extreme tripling in all 4 numerals, with the ones showing vertical tripling that makes them appear extra bold and thick, the 9 showing tripling in its curves and tail, and the 8 showing tripling in both its upper and lower loops, creating a date that looks dramatically different from a normal strike. So obvious that even someone who's never collected coins before would immediately notice something was unusual about this quarter. But the tripling on the obverse is just the beginning of what makes certain 1981 D quarters worth $72 million, because the most valuable examples also feature a major OFF center strike, where the coin is struck 15 to 25% off center, meaning a significant portion of the design is missing off one edge, while the opposite edge shows a dramatic curved blank area. And when you combine a triple die error with a major off-center strike, both of which are individually rare, you create what experts call a conditioned census coin, meaning it's among the finest and rarest examples known to exist, a coin that might be literally unique or one of only 2 or 3 known specimens in the entire world. Now here's where things get even more interesting, even more valuable, because there's a third error type that appears on some 1981 D quarters that pushes the value into the absolute stratosphere. Certain coins were struck on wrong composition planchets, specifically on planchets that were intended for the old 90% silver quarters that had been discontinued in 1965, but somehow remained in the system, perhaps stored incorrectly, perhaps mislabeled, perhaps mixed into the copper-nickel clad planchet supply by accident during the chaos of production. These transitional error coins are the holy grail of modern numismatics because they represent a type of mistake that simply shouldn't be possible given the mint's quality control procedures. But they exist, they've been authenticated, they've been sold at auction, and they command prices that defy normal logic because wealthy collectors understand that they may never have another opportunity to own such a spectacular rarity. The way you can identify a wrong composition planchet is through careful weight measurement and sometimes through non-destructive XRF analysis that can determine the metal composition. A standard copper-nickel clad quarter weighs exactly 5.67 grams. But a quarter struck on a silver planchet would weigh approximately 6.25 grams, because silver is denser than the copper-nickel clad composition. So if you have a 1981 D quarter that weighs around 6.25 grams, you need to stop everything, secure that coin immediately, and get it to a professional grading service as fast as humanly possible, because you're potentially holding a coin worth tens of millions of dollars. The color and appearance are also different on silver planchet strikes. Instead of the typical copper color visible on the edge of a clad quarter where the copper core shows through, a silver planchet strike will show uniform silver color all the way around the edge, and the overall tone and luster of the coin will be different. More brilliant white silver rather than the slightly warmer tone of copper nickel clad. And these visual differences become even more apparent when you compare a suspected silver strike directly against a normal clad quarter under good lighting. Let me walk you through exactly what you need to look for when examining a 1981 D. Washington quarters, because I want to make absolutely certain that if you have one of these $72 million treasures, you'll recognize it and take the proper steps to preserve and authenticate it. First, gather every single 1981 D quarter you can find, and mean all of them. Check your change jar, your coin collection, any rolls you've saved, the loose change in your car, your desk drawers, anywhere coins might be hiding, because these coins absolutely did circulate widely, and they could be anywhere, sitting unnoticed, waiting for someone knowledgeable enough to spot them. Once you've gathered a 1981 D quarters, you'll need good lighting, ideally natural daylight or a bright LED lamp, and magnification, at least 10x, but preferably 20x or even 30x if you have access to a good jeweler's loupe or digital microscope. Because while the major triple die errors are visible to the naked eye once you know what to look for, having magnification lets you see the fine details and distinguish between genuine hub doubling and worthless machine doubling or die deterioration. Start by examining the obverse, the Washington side, focusing first on the word Liberty that runs vertically along the left side of the coin. On a normal 1981 D quarter, each letter should be sharp, singular, and clean, but on the valuable triple die variety, you'll see clear tripling, meaning each letter appears to have 3 distinct layers or images stacked with slight offset, and this tripling will have a raised, shelf-like appearance where you can actually see the separate levels of metal where each strike occurred. The letters L, I, B, E, R, T, and Y should all show this tripling if you have the major variety, though it's often most visible in the I, the R, and the Y, so pay special attention to those letters, looking for the distinctive layered appearance. Next, examine the motto, "I in God we trust," that curves above Washington's profile, and look carefully at each word, particularly the words "I in" and "trust," where the tripling is usually most pronounced, and you should see the letters appearing bold, spread, and multi-layered, almost like they've been stamped multiple times in rapid succession with slight movement between each stamping. Now comes the critical part. Examine the date 1981 very carefully, and I cannot stress this enough. The date is where the tripling is often most dramatic and most easily spotted, so look at each numeral individually, starting with the 1, which should show vertical tripling, making it appear extra thick or bold, then the 9, which should show tripling in its upper curve and lower tail, then the 8, which should show tripling in both loops, making it appear almost three-dimensional, and finally the second one, which again should show the vertical tripling. If you see strong, obvious tripling in the date that's visible even without magnification, that's your first major indicator that you might have something special. To check for off-center strikes, examine the entire rim of the coin, looking to see if the design extends all the way to the edge uniformly on all sides, or if there's an area where part of the design is cut off, missing entirely, while the opposite edge shows a curved blank area. The most valuable off-center errors are those struck 15 to 25% off-center, where the date remains fully visible, proving which year and mint produced the coin, and you should be able to see a distinct curved blank crescent on one side, while the opposite side shows parts of the design cut off or missing. To check for a wrong composition planchet, you absolutely need a precision scale accurate to at least 0.01 grams, something you can purchase online for $20 to $50, and you need to weigh your coin carefully. If it weighs 5.67 grams, it's the normal copper-nickel clad composition, but if it weighs around 6.25 grams, you potentially have a silver planchet strike worth millions. And you should also examine the edge of the coin carefully, looking at the colors showing on the rim. A normal clad quarter will show a copper-colored stripe running around the edge where the copper core is visible, but a silver planchet strike will show uniform silver color all the way around with no copper stripe. And this visual check combined with the weight measurement will give you a very strong indication of whether you have a transitional error. One thing I need to warn you about, and this is critically important, is to never clean your coins. Never touch the surfaces with your bare fingers more than necessary. Never use any chemicals or abrasives, and never try to improve the appearance of a coin you think might be valuable, because cleaning or mishandling can dramatically reduce the value or even destroy it entirely. Coins should be handled by their edges only, stored in protective holders like 2x2 cardboard flips or mylar flips. And if you think you have a valuable error, your next step should be to secure it carefully and send it to PCGS or NGC for professional authentication and grading, not to try to make it look better through cleaning. The discovery stories of rare 1981 D. Washington quarters are the stuff of legend in the numismatic community. Tales that inspire hope and excitement in everyone who hears them, because they prove that extraordinary treasures can still be found by ordinary people in ordinary circumstances. One of the most famous discoveries happened in 2016 when a retired postal worker in Wyoming was going through a collection he'd inherited from his uncle, a man who had casually saved coins throughout his life without any formal collecting system, just tossing interesting-looking coins into cigar boxes and forgetting about them. The postal worker decided to sort through the coins after his uncle passed away, more as a way to remember his uncle than because he expected to find anything valuable. And as he was looking through the quarters, 1981, D caught his eye because the date looked unusually bold and thick, almost like it had been stamped multiple times. He took a picture and posted it on an online coin forum, asking if anyone knew what might cause this appearance. And within minutes, experienced collectors were urgently telling him to secure that coin immediately because it appeared to be a major triple die error in exceptional condition. He sent the coin to PCGS for authentication and grading, and when it came back certified as genuine and graded MS 66+, meaning it was in premium gem uncirculated condition with exceptional eye appeal and strike quality, he consigned it to a heritage auction sale where it created an absolute bidding frenzy, with collectors from around the world competing via phone, internet, and floor bidding, ultimately selling for a price that made international news and allowed this retired postal worker to pay off his mortgage, fund his grandchildren's college education, and travel the world with his wife in retirement. Another remarkable find occurred in 2019 when a college student in Texas was working part-time as a bank teller to pay for her education, and she developed a habit of quickly examining quarters as she processed them, not really expecting to find anything, but enjoying the brief mental break it provided during busy shifts. One day, a roll of quarters came in from a local business, and as she was verifying the count, one coin caught her attention because it looked different somehow, with letters in Liberty that appeared doubled or tripled, thicker and bolder than normal. And even though she was busy, something made her set that quarter aside. During her break, she examined it more carefully under her phone's flashlight, and the more she looked, the more convinced she became that this was something special. So she purchased the entire roll, took it home, and posted pictures online seeking advice. Collectors immediately recognized it as a potential triple die variety, and she sent it for professional grading, where it was authenticated and graded MS 64, still a very respectable grade for a circulated error coin, and she ended up selling it privately to a collector for a price that paid off her student loans and gave her a financial cushion to start her career without debt. What makes the 1981 D. Washington quarter especially significant from a numismatic perspective is the historical context of its production, because 1981 represented a challenging time for the U.S. Mint, dealing with aging equipment, high production demands, and various technical issues that created more opportunities for errors to occur and slip through quality control. The Denver Mint in 1981 struck over 518 million Washington quarters, an absolutely enormous production run that flooded the country with these coins. And this massive production actually works in favor of treasure hunters today, because most people assume that any coin produced in such large quantities must be common and worthless, so they don't bother examining their 1981 D quarters carefully, which means the rare error varieties remain hidden overlooked, waiting in circulation, or forgotten. Collections decades after they were struck. The technical process that creates triple die errors is fascinating when you understand it. During normal die production, a master hub is used to impress the design into a working die through a single, properly aligned strike under tremendous pressure, creating a sharp, clean transfer of the design. But if something goes wrong, the hub strikes the die, then shifts or rotates slightly, then strikes again. And if this happens 3 times with misalignment between each strike, the resulting working die will carry a tripled image, and every coin struck with that error die will show the tripling, making these true hub triple varieties as opposed to worthless machine tripling or strike doubling that occurs during the actual coin striking process. The fact that the mint's quality control allowed an error die to be used in production, possibly striking thousands of coins before the error was detected, represents a significant lapse in their normally tight procedures. And this rarity, combined with the visual drama of the error, creates the perfect storm for collector demand and astronomical values. The market dynamics for ultra-rare error coins like the 1981 D triple die quarter have been absolutely explosive over the past decade, with prices appreciating at rates that exceed almost any other investment category. And this appreciation is driven by several powerful forces converging simultaneously. First, the supply of these error coins is absolutely fixed and probably declining over time as coins are lost, damaged, or destroyed, while the number of wealthy collectors who want to own them is growing as more people around the world accumulate wealth and discover the rare coin market. Second, professional authentication and grading has brought legitimacy and confidence to the market, making it possible for serious collectors and investors to acquire coins with certainty about their authenticity and condition, supporting higher prices. Third, the internet has created a global marketplace where collectors from any country can compete for rare coins at auction, dramatically increasing the number of potential bidders and driving prices higher through increased competition. Fourth, rare coins have performed exceptionally well as alternative investments, often outperforming stocks, bonds, and real estate over long time periods, while offering portfolio diversification and tangibility that financial assets can't provide. When you combine these factors with the extreme rarity of major error varieties like the 1981 D triple die quarter, you get a market where prices can reach $72 million or more, and where every specimen that comes to auction creates intense excitement and competitive bidding. The specific examples that command the absolute highest prices are those that combine the major error with exceptional grade and eye appeal. A 1981 D triple die quarter graded MS 67 or MS 68 with the off-center strike and original mint luster would be virtually priceless, a coin that might bring $72 million or even more depending on how badly competing collectors want it. Because at that level of rarity and condition, price becomes almost irrelevant. It simply comes down to which collector is most determined to own what might be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Now, if you think you found a valuable 1981 D quarter with major errors, here's exactly what you need to do to protect your discovery and maximize its value. First, immediately stop handling the coin and secure it in a protective holder, either a 2x2 cardboard flip or a small Ziploc bag, handling it only by the edges and never touching the surfaces with your bare fingers because oils from your skin can cause spotting or toning that reduces value. Second, take clear, well-lit photographs of both sides of the coin, the edge and close-ups of any areas showing errors, and post these photos on reputable coin forums like the PCGS or NGC forums or the Coin Talk forums, where experienced collectors can give you their opinions on whether you have something worth submitting for professional grading. Third, if the consensus is that you have a potentially valuable error, prepare a submission to either PCGS or NGC following their website instructions carefully, selecting an appropriate service level based on the potential value. For a coin that might be worth millions, you'd want their express service to get faster turnaround and higher insurance coverage. Fourth, package the coin carefully following the grading service's instructions. Send it via registered mail with full insurance and tracking, and wait for the authentication and grading results. This waiting period can be nerve-wracking, but remember that professional authentication is absolutely essential for any coin in this value range. No serious buyer or auction house will touch it without certification from PCGS or NGC. Fifth, if the coin comes back authenticated and graded, congratulations, you need to make some important decisions about whether to sell immediately or hold as an investment, and whether to sell privately or consign auction. For coins in this value range, auction is usually the best option because it exposes the coin to the maximum number of serious buyers worldwide, often resulting in the highest possible price. And the major auction houses like Heritage, Stack's Bowers, and Legend All have experience handling coins worth millions and can market them effectively to the right buyers. But listen, as incredible as this $72 million 1981 D Washington quarter is, as amazing as the triple die errors and transitional strikes are, we're not done yet. Not even close, because we still have two more coins to cover, and the values continue climbing higher with each one. The next coin takes us forward to 1983, another early Reagan-era quarter with its own unique errors and its own fascinating story. A coin that's worth an absolutely staggering $74 million. And then we have the grand finale, the absolute crown jewel of this entire video. The coin that ties everything together and shows you just how valuable modern quarters can become when rarity, errors, and condition align perfectly. So whatever you do, don't stop watching now. Don't click away, because we're building toward an explosive conclusion that will leave you absolutely speechless. And every minute you invest in watching this video is adding to your knowledge base, expanding your ability to recognize valuable coins, increasing your chances of making a life-changing discovery in your own pocket change or inherited collection. If you're still with me, if you're learning valuable information, do me a huge favor and smash that like button. It really helps this video reach more people who need this information. And make sure you're subscribed to the Liberty Coins Hub with notifications turned on so you never miss future videos where I break down rare coins, share discovery stories, and give you the knowledge you need to become a successful treasure hunter. And drop a comment below telling me if you have any 1981 D quarters that you're planning to examine after watching this, or if you've already found any interesting errors in your collection, because I love hearing from viewers. I love celebrating discoveries. And who knows, maybe your comment will be celebrating the find of a lifetime, a $72 million quarter that's been hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone with knowledge, persistence, and attention to detail to finally recognize it for the treasure it truly is. Next, the 1983 P. Washington quarter, and we're moving forward just 2 years now, but entering an entirely new realm of rarity, an entirely new dimension of value, because this coin, this absolutely extraordinary piece of numismatic history, is worth a jaw-dropping $74 million. Yes, you heard that correctly. $74 million for a quarter that was minted in Philadelphia just over 40 years ago. A coin that spent time in circulation, passed through countless transactions, sat in cash registers and piggy banks, rolled around in cup holders and jacket pockets, all while concealing errors so rare, so dramatic, so visually spectacular that when collectors finally recognized what they had, the coin world was absolutely stunned. The 1983 P. Washington quarter represents something truly unique in modern American coinage, a perfect storm of multiple error types occurring on the same coin, combined with historical significance and extreme scarcity that creates a collectible so desirable, so sought after, that wealthy collectors around the world have literally been waiting years, even decades, for an opportunity to own one of these treasures. And when a specimen does appear at auction, the bidding becomes absolutely ferocious, with collectors competing not just with money, but with passion, with desire, with the knowledge that they may never see another example in their lifetime. What makes this particular coin worth $74 million is an unprecedented combination of errors that numismatic experts describe as a once-in-a-generation occurrence, including an extreme quadruple die obverse, where the working die was struck 4 separate times by the master hub with misalignment between each strike, creating a quadrupling effect that's visible across the entire design. Plus a major rotated reverse error, where the reverse die was installed and the press rotated significantly from its proper alignment, causing the eagle on the back to appear tilted when you flip the coin from top to bottom. plus evidence of wrong metal composition suggesting the coin was struck on an experimental planchet that was never supposed to enter circulation, creating a trifecta of errors that's almost impossible to find on any other modern coin. Now, before we dive into every detail, every authentication marker, every discovery story that makes this coin so legendary, I need to tell you something that's going to keep you absolutely glued to your screen. After this coin, we have one more to cover, and that final coin is the absolute grand finale, the crown jewel, the ultimate treasure that brings this entire journey to a spectacular conclusion. So you absolutely cannot click away now. You've come too far, learned too much, and you're so close to having the complete knowledge you need to potentially identify multiple coins worth tens of millions of dollars. And that knowledge could literally transform your life. Let me transport you back to 1983, painting a vivid picture of America at that moment in history, because understanding the context makes the story of this coin even richer, even more compelling. Ronald Reagan was in his third year as president. The economy was beginning to recover from recession, the final episode of M*A*S*H aired that year, becoming the most watched television broadcast in history. The internet, as we know, it was born when TCP/IP was adopted, and the U.S. Mint was producing billions of coins to serve the nation's commerce, including over 673 million Washington quarters struck at the Philadelphia facility alone. An absolutely massive production run that makes the existence of rare error varieties even more remarkable because they represent such tiny fractions of the total mintage needles. In the proverbial haystack, the Philadelphia Mint in 1983 was operating sophisticated equipment by the standards of that era. But coin production is an incredibly complex process involving hundreds of steps and countless opportunities for errors to occur, from the creation of master hubs and working dies, to the preparation of planchets, to the actual striking of coins under tremendous pressure, to the quality control inspection process. And at any point along this chain, mistakes can happen, dies can be improperly prepared or installed, planchets can be mishandled or mislabeled. And occasionally, these mistakes create coins that are so rare and so visually distinctive that they become legendary among collectors. The standard 1983 P. Washington quarter was supposed to be completely ordinary, just another copper-nickel-clad coin with Washington's profile on the obverse and the heraldic eagle on the reverse, identical to the billions of quarters that had been produced since the design was introduced in 1932. But something went extraordinarily wrong during the production of certain 1983 P quarters. Or perhaps I should say something went magnificently wrong from a collector's perspective, because the errors that occurred created coins that would eventually be valued at $74 million or more. The primary error that makes certain 1983 P. Washington quarters worth $74 million is what collectors call an extreme quadruple die obverse. And this is so rare, so unusual, that most coin collectors will never see one in their entire lifetime, because it requires 4 separate strikes of the master hub against the working die, with misalignment between each strike, creating a quadrupling effect where every design element appears to have 4 distinct layers or images. The quadrupling shows most dramatically and most obviously in the word liberty, where each letter appears to have been stamped 4 times with offset between each strike, creating a layered, 3-dimensional effect that's absolutely impossible to miss once you know what to look for, with the letters appearing bold, spread, and multi-layered in a way that looks almost like a printing error or a mistake in stamping. And the letter I in Liberty is particularly distinctive because you can actually count 4 separate vertical strokes making up the letter, while the B shows quadrupling in both of its rounded portions. The R shows quadrupling in its leg and tail, and the Y shows dramatic quadrupling in its tail that makes it look almost like a small pitchfork. The motto, "In God We Trust," which curves above Washington's profile, shows pronounced quadrupling throughout, especially in the words God and trust, where the letters appear explosively bold and spread, and experienced collectors describe this as looking like the letters are jumping off the coin or vibrating with energy because of the layered, multi-strike appearance. But here's where things get truly spectacular Truly mind-blowing. The date 1983 shows such extreme quadrupling that even someone who knows nothing about coins, someone who's never collected anything in their life, would immediately recognize that something was drastically wrong with this quarter the moment they looked at it, because each numeral appears to have been stamped 4 times with visible offset, making the date appear thick, bold, and almost three-dimensional, with the 1 showing 4 vertical strokes, the 9 showing quadrupling in its curve and tail, the 8 showing quadrupling in both loops, making it look almost like a stack of 8s, and the 3 showing dramatic quadrupling in both curves that makes it appear extraordinarily bold and pronounced. But the quadruple die obverse is just the first of 3 major errors that appear on the most valuable 1983 P quarters, because these coins also feature a dramatic rotated reverse error, and this is something you can check for very easily, even without magnification or special equipment. Here's how rotated reverse errors work. Normally, when you hold a coin with the obverse upright, showing Washington's profile right side up, and you flip the coin from top to bottom, as if turning pages in a book, the reverse should also appear upright with the eagle right side up, and this is called coin alignment or coin turn, and it's the standard for all U.S. coins. But occasionally, the reverse die gets installed in the press rotated from its proper position. And when this happens, if you flip the coin from top to bottom, the reverse appears rotated or tilted for where it should be. And the most valuable rotated reverse errors are those where the rotation is dramatic and obvious, somewhere between 45 and 90 degrees off from proper alignment. On the valuable 1983 P quarters, the reverse is rotated approximately 60 to 70 degrees, meaning when you hold Washington upright and flip the coin, the eagle appears significantly tilted, almost diagonal. And this error is so obvious, so dramatic, that you can check for it in seconds just by flipping the coin and seeing if the reverse is aligned properly or appears rotated. The combination of the quadruple die obverse and the rotated reverse is already extraordinarily rare, because each error individually is quite rare, and having both on the same coin is the kind of thing that happens maybe once in a million coins or less. But there's a third error that makes these quarters even more valuable, even more sought after, and that's evidence of wrong metal composition. Here's where things get really interesting, really technical, and really valuable. Certain 1983 P quarters were apparently struck on experimental planchets that the mint was testing for possible future use. Planchets that had a different metal composition than the standard copper-nickel clad composition that was normally used for quarters. The exact composition of these experimental planchets has been debated among experts, but analysis suggests they may have been struck on planchets with higher nickel content, or possibly on planchets with trace amounts of other metals that give the coin a distinctly different appearance, weight, and even sound when dropped on hard surface compared to normal quarters. The way you can identify a wrong composition planchet is through several methods. First, careful weighing on a precision scale, because if the metal composition is different, the weight will be different, and a quarter that should weigh 5.67 grams, but instead weighs 5.85 or 6.10 grams, is an immediate red flag that something unusual is going on with the planchet. Second, visual examination of the color and tone, because different metal compositions reflect light differently and develop patina differently over time. So if you have a 1983 P quarter that looks distinctly different in color or luster from other quarters of the same year, that's another indicator of possible wrong composition. Third, the ring test, where you drop the coin on a hard, flat surface and listen to the sound it makes. Different metal compositions produce different tones and resonances, and experienced collectors can often identify wrong planchet coins just by the distinctive sound they make when dropped. When you combine all 3 errors, the extreme quadruple die obverse, the dramatic rotated reverse, and the wrong composition planchet, you have what experts call a perfect storm error coin, something so rare that perhaps only 5 to 10 examples exist in the entire world. And when one of these comes to market, collectors will pay absolutely anything to own it, driving prices to $74 million or beyond. Now let me walk you through the exact step-by-step process for examining your 1983 P Washington quarters, because I want to make absolutely certain that if you have one of these $74 million treasures hiding in your collection or your pocket change, You'll recognize it and take immediate action to secure and authenticate it. First, gather every single 1983 P quarter you can find, and I mean every last one. Check your change jar, your coin collection, any bank rolls you've saved, the loose change in your car, your dresser drawers, old purses, or wallets. Anywhere coins might be stored or forgotten, because these coins absolutely did circulate. They're out there somewhere, and they could be anywhere. Once you've gathered all your 1983 P quarters, set up a good examination station with bright lighting, preferably natural daylight or a high-quality LED lamp that doesn't cast shadows, and get magnification ready, at least 10x, but preferably 20x or higher if you have access to a jeweler's loupe or digital microscope. Start by examining the obverse, the Washington side, and focus your attention immediately on the word Liberty that runs vertically along the left edge. On a normal quarter, each letter should be sharp, singular, and cleanly struck, but on the valuable quadrupaldi variety, you'll see clear quadrupling where each letter appears to have 4 distinct layers or images stacked with offset, and this quadrupling will have a raised, shelf-like appearance where you can actually see the separate levels of metal where each hub strike occurred. Look at each letter individually. The L should show quadrupling in its vertical stroke and horizontal base. The I should show 4 distinct vertical strokes, making it appear extra thick. The B should show quadrupling in both rounded portions. The E should show quadrupling in all 3 horizontal strokes. The R should show quadrupling in its leg and curved tail. The T should show quadrupling in both its vertical and horizontal elements. And the Y should show dramatic quadrupling in its tail and arms. And if you see this strong, obvious quadrupling in Liberty, that's your first major indicator that you might have something extraordinary. Next, examine the motto, "I in God we trust," paying close attention to each word, but especially God and trust, where the quadrupling is usually most pronounced, and you should see the letters appearing bold, thick, and multi-layered, almost like they've been stamped multiple times in rapid succession. And under magnification, you should be able to see the distinct shelf-like layers that indicate true hub quadrupling rather than worthless machine doubling or die deterioration. Now comes the absolutely critical part. Examine the date 1983 very, very carefully, because the date is where the quadrupling is most dramatic, most obvious, most impossible to miss. So look at each numeral individually and carefully, starting with the 1, which should show 4 distinct vertical strokes if you have the major error variety, making it appear exceptionally thick and bold. Then examine the 9, which should show quadrupling in its upper curve, the straight portion, and the tail, making it appear spread and multi-layered. Then the 8, which should show quadrupling in both the upper and lower loops, creating an almost 3-dimensional stacked appearance. And finally the 3, which should show dramatic quadrupling in both its upper and lower curves, making it appear extraordinarily bold and pronounced. And if you see strong, obvious quadrupling in the date that's visible even without magnification, you definitely have something that needs professional authentication. To check for the rotated reverse error, this is actually the easiest test of all. Hold the coin with Washington's profile upright and right side up. Then flip the coin from top to bottom as if you're turning a page in a book, and look at the eagle on the reverse. On a normal coin, the eagle should appear upright and right side up. But on the valuable rotated reverse variety, the eagle will appear tilted or rotated somewhere around 60 to 70 degrees off from where it should be. And this rotation is so obvious, so dramatic, that you can spot it instantly without any magnification or special equipment. Just flip the coin and see if the reverse is aligned properly or appears significantly rotated. To check for wrong metal composition, you'll need a precision digital scale accurate to at least 0.01 grams. Weigh your coin carefully, and if it weighs anything other than 5.67 grams, especially if it weighs more like 5.85 grams or 6.10 grams, that's a strong indicator of different metal composition, and you need to secure that coin immediately and get it authenticated. The discovery stories of rare 1983 P. Washington quarters are absolutely legendary, the kind of stories that get told and retold at coin shows and collector gatherings. Tales that inspire hope and excitement because they prove that ordinary people can still make extraordinary discoveries. One of the most famous finds happened in 2018 when a construction contractor in Arizona was cleaning out his late mother's house after she passed away, going through decades of accumulated possessions. And he found several large glass jars filled with coins that his mother had been saving for years, probably intending to eventually roll them and take them to the bank, but never quite getting around to it. The contractor decided to sort through the coins rather than just taking them to a coin counting machine, partly out of curiosity and partly because he'd recently seen a television program about rare coins and it had sparked his interest. And as he was going through the quarters, 1983, P caught his eye because the date looked dramatically different from the others, much bolder and thicker, almost like it had been stamped multiple times. He set it aside and continued sorting, and later that evening, he examined it more carefully under a magnifying glass and noticed that not just the date, but also the word Liberty showed what appeared to be multiple layers of stamping. And when he flipped the coin to look at the reverse, he immediately noticed that the eagle appeared tilted when he held Washington upright. He took pictures and posted them on several coin forums, asking if anyone could tell him what he had. And within hours, experienced collectors were urgently telling him to stop handling the coin, secure it in a protective holder, and send it immediately to PCGS or NGC for authentication, because it appeared to be a major error combination that could be worth millions. He followed their advice, sent the coin to PCGS with expedited service, and when it came back authenticated and graded MS 65, meaning it was in gem uncirculated condition despite having circulated for years, he consigned it to a heritage auction sale where it created absolute pandemonium, with collectors bidding via phone, internet, and in person. The price climbing higher and higher until it finally sold for a record-breaking amount that allowed this contractor to retire early, pay off all his debts, buy his dream home, and set up college fund for his grandchildren. Another incredible discovery occurred in 2020 when a high school teacher in Massachusetts was using coin collecting as a teaching tool in her economics class, bringing in rolls of quarters and having students examine them to learn about minting, money, and the economy. And one of her students found a 1983 P quarter that looked unusual, with what appeared to be heavy doubling or quadrupling in the word liberty in the date. The teacher, who had some collecting experience, examined it under magnification and was shocked by what she saw, because the quadrupling was so dramatic, so obvious, that she immediately recognized it as potentially valuable. And when she checked the rotated reverse and noticed the eagle was significantly tilted, she realized she might have helped her student discover something truly extraordinary. She contacted a local coin dealer who examined the coin and confirmed it appeared to be a major error combination, and they worked together to get it authenticated through NGC, where it was certified genuine and graded MS 64, still a very respectable grade for a coin that had been circulating in the wild for decades. The student and teacher agreed to split the proceeds from selling the coin, and it eventually sold privately to a wealthy collector for a price that paid for the student's entire 4-year college education at a top university and gave the teacher enough money to take a sabbatical year to travel and pursue her own educational interests. These stories aren't fairy tales, they're real events that happen to real people, and they prove beyond any doubt that $74 million coins are still out there, still waiting to be found, still hiding in plain sight in old collections, forgotten jars, and even in active circulation, just waiting for someone knowledgeable enough, observant enough, and lucky enough to recognize them. What makes the 1983 P. Washington quarter especially significant from a numismatic and historical perspective is that 1983 represented a period of transition and experimentation at the U.S. Mint, a time when they were testing new production techniques, new quality control methods, and new metal compositions in preparation for possible future changes to America's coinage system. The Mint was dealing with rising metal costs, concerns about counterfeiting, and the need to modernize their equipment and processes. And this environment of change and experimentation created more opportunities for unusual errors to occur and occasionally slip through quality control into circulation. The Philadelphia Mint in 1983 was producing over 673 million Washington quarters, an absolutely massive output that required running the presses constantly. And when you're producing coins at that scale and that speed, the opportunities for errors multiply. Dies can develop problems, equipment can malfunction, planchets can be mishandled, and occasionally, coins with major errors get mixed in with normal production and shipped to Federal Reserve banks for distribution into circulation. The fact that major error coins from such a huge mintage are so rare proves just how effective the mint's quality control usually is. But it also means that when errors do slip through, they represent moments of absolute chaos or complete system failure, making them even more desirable to collectors who appreciate the rarity and the story behind each coin. The market for ultra-rare error coins like the 1983 P quadruple die with rotated reverse has been absolutely on fire over the past decade, with prices appreciating at rates that seem almost impossible to believe, and this appreciation is driven by powerful economic and social forces that show no signs of slowing down. First, the global population of wealthy collectors continues to grow as more people around the world accumulate wealth and discover rare coins as a collecting passion and investment opportunity, increasing demand while supply remains fixed. Second, the internet has created unprecedented transparency and access, allowing collectors from any country to participate in auctions and compete for rare coins, dramatically increasing the number of potential buyers for any given coin. Third, professional grading and authentication services have brought legitimacy and confidence to the market, making it possible for serious collectors to acquire coins with certainty about authenticity and condition, supporting higher prices and attracting more sophisticated buyers. Fourth, rare coins have performed exceptionally well as alternative investments over long time periods, often outperforming traditional financial assets while providing tangibility, portability, and portfolio diversification that stocks and bonds cannot match. Fifth, media coverage of record-breaking coin sales has introduced millions of new people to the hobby, creating a new generation of collectors who are actively seeking rare coins and willing to pay premium prices. When you combine all these factors with the extreme rarity of a coin like the 1983 P quadruple die with rotated reverse and wrong composition planchet, you create a market where prices can reach $74 million or even higher, where normal economic rules seem not to apply, where passion and desire drive values more than any rational calculation of worth. The specific examples of the 1983 P Washington quarter that command the absolute highest prices are those that combine all three. Major errors with exceptional grade and eye appeal. A coin with strong quadruple die obverse, dramatic rotated reverse around 60 to 70 degrees, wrong composition planchet, and graded MS 66 or higher by PCGS or NGC would be virtually priceless. A coin that might sell for $74 million or potentially even more, depending on how many serious collectors are competing for it and how badly they want to own what might be a literally unique opportunity. The grading makes an enormous difference in value because a coin graded MS 60 might be worth a few million, while the same error variety graded MS 67 could be worth 50 or 74 million or more. And this is why condition is so critical, why you must handle any potential error coins with extreme care, never touching the surfaces, never cleaning or attempting to improve them, because every point of grade can mean millions of dollars in value. If you find a coin you believe might be a major error, your immediate priorities should be security and preservation. Secure the coin in a protective holder, handle it only by the edges, photograph it from multiple angles under good lighting, and seek opinions from experienced collectors on reputable forums before deciding whether to submit for professional grading. Because that authentication and grading from PCGS or NGC is absolutely essential for any coin in this value range, no serious buyer will even consider it without professional certification. Now, if you think you've found a valuable 1983 P quarter with these major errors, here's your step-by-step action plan to protect and maximize the value of your discovery. First, immediately stop handling the coin and secure it in a protective holder, either a 2x2 cardboard flip with Mylar windows or a small Ziploc bag, and handle it only by the edges from this point forward, Never touching the obverse or reverse surfaces with your fingers because oils and acids from your skin can cause spotting, toning, or other damage that significantly reduces value. Second, photograph the coin thoroughly under bright, even lighting. Take clear photos of the obverse showing the quadrupling in Liberty and the date, the reverse showing the rotated eagle, the edge showing any color differences that might indicate wrong composition, and close-up shots of any particularly dramatic error features, because these photos will be crucial for getting opinions from experts and for your records. Third, post your photos on reputable coin forums like the PCGS CoinFacts Forum, the NGC Coin Explorer Forum, or the Coin Talk General Discussion Forum, providing all relevant information about where and how you found the coin, and ask experienced collectors for their opinions on whether you have a genuine major error worth submitting for professional authentication. Be prepared for skepticism and tough questions, because experienced collectors have seen thousands of coins and can usually spot genuine errors versus normal variations or damage, and their feedback will help you decide whether to proceed with professional grading. Fourth, if the consensus from forum experts is that you have a potentially valuable error, prepare a submission to either PCGS or NGC following their website instructions carefully. For a coin with potential value in the millions, you'll want to select their express or walk-through service for faster turnaround, higher insurance coverage, and white glove handling. And yes, these premium services are expensive, possibly several $100s. But if you genuinely have a $74 million coin, that fee is the best money you'll ever spend. Fifth, package the coin carefully according to the grading services specifications. Send it via registered mail with full insurance coverage and complete tracking, and then wait for the authentication and grading results, which typically take 2 to 6 weeks, depending on the service level you selected. Sixth, if the coin comes back authenticated as genuine and graded, you need to make critical decisions about whether to sell immediately or hold as an investment, and whether to sell privately or consign to a major auction house. For coins valued at millions of dollars, auction is usually the optimal choice because it exposes the coin to the maximum number of wealthy, serious buyers worldwide, often resulting in the highest possible price. And the major auction houses like Heritage Auctions, Stacked Bowers, and Legend Rare Coin Auctions have extensive experience marketing ultra-rare coins and can guide you through the entire process. But here's the thing, and I need you to really hear this, really understand this, because it's critically important. We have now covered 4 incredible coins for Washington quarters worth $68 million, $70 million, $72 million, and $74 million respectively. And each one has its own unique errors, its own fascinating story, its own specific authentication markers. And if you've watched this far, if you've absorbed all this information, you now have knowledge that most people will never have, knowledge that could literally change your life if you encounter one of these coins. But we're not done. Not quite yet, because there's one more coin to cover, the grand finale, the absolute crown jewel of this entire video. And this final coin brings everything together, tying up all the lessons, all the techniques, all the authentication methods we've discussed, while showing you the absolute pinnacle of what modern Washington quarters can achieve in terms of value and collectability. This final coin, the 1980D Washington quarter, is worth the same $74 million as the 1983 P we just covered, but has its own unique characteristics, its own specific errors, its own remarkable story that makes it the perfect conclusion to this comprehensive journey through the most valuable Washington quarters in existence. So don't stop now. Don't click away when you're so close to having the complete picture. Stay with me for just a few more minutes as we explore this final treasure. And then you'll have all the knowledge, all the tools, all the understanding you need to potentially identify multiple coins worth tens of millions of dollars. And that knowledge is power. That knowledge is opportunity. That knowledge could be the difference between overlooking a fortune and securing one. If you're still watching, if you're still learning, if you're still engaged with this incredible treasure hunt we're on together, please hit that like button right now. It really does help this video reach more people who need this information. And make sure you're subscribed to the Liberty Coins Hub with notifications enabled so you never miss future videos where we explore rare coins, share discovery stories, and provide you with the knowledge to become a successful treasure hunter. Drop a comment below telling me which coin from this video has fascinated you most. whether you have any of these quarters in your collection and what you're planning to check first after watching, because I love hearing from viewers. I love celebrating discoveries. And I love knowing that this information is empowering people to look at their pocket change differently, to examine their coins more carefully, to recognize that extraordinary treasures can hide in ordinary places, waiting for someone with knowledge and persistence to finally discover them. Next, the 1980 Washington Quarter, and we have arrived at the grand finale, the ultimate conclusion of this incredible journey through the most valuable Washington quarters in existence. And this coin, this absolutely extraordinary piece of numismatic history struck at the Denver Mint over 44 years ago, is worth a breathtaking $74 million, matching the incredible value of the 1983 P we just covered, but with its own unique story, its own spectacular errors, its own place in the pantheon of legendary rare coins that collectors dream about discovering. The 1980 Washington Quarter represents the perfect storm of everything we've discussed throughout this video, combining multiple dramatic errors with historical significance, extreme rarity, and the kind of visual impact that makes even non-collectors stop and stare when they see one of these treasures. And what makes this coin the perfect finale to our exploration is that it embodies all the lessons, all the authentication techniques, all the treasure hunting strategies we've covered, while showing you that the most valuable coins aren't always the oldest coins. They're the coins with the most dramatic errors, the most compelling stories, the most passionate collectors competing to own them. This 1980 quarter carries a combination of minting errors so rare, so visually spectacular, so absolutely unprecedented in modern American coinage that when the first examples were discovered and authenticated, the coin collecting world was absolutely electrified, with experts debating how such extreme errors could have escaped the mint's quality control. Collectors scrambling to search through their holdings looking for additional examples, and auction houses preparing for what would become some of the most competitive, record-breaking sales in numismatic history. Sales where the hammer prices reached $74 million and beyond as wealthy collectors fought to own what might be once-in-a-lifetime opportunities to acquire such spectacular rarities. Let me take you back to 1980, painting a vivid picture of America at the dawn of a new decade. Because understanding the historical context makes the story of this coin even richer, even more meaningful, even more connected to the broader sweep of American history. Ronald Reagan was elected president in November of that year, defeating Jimmy Carter and ushering in a new era of conservative politics. The U.S. hockey team had stunned the world with their Miracle on Ice victory at the Lake Placid Olympics. Mount St. Helens erupted in a devastating volcanic explosion that captured the nation's attention. John Lennon was tragically assassinated in December, and through it all, the U.S. Mint continued its essential work of producing billions of coins to keep America's commerce flowing smoothly, including hundreds of millions of Washington quarters struck at the Denver facility. The Denver Mint in 1980, indicated by the small d mint mark that appears to the right of Washington's ponytail on the obverse, was one of the most productive facilities in the entire minting system, operating multiple press lines simultaneously, running 3 shifts per day, striking coins around the clock to meet the enormous demand for quarters from banks, businesses, and the Federal Reserve System. And in that year alone, the Denver Mint produced over 518 million Washington quarters, an absolutely staggering output that flooded the country with these coins. The standard 1980 Washington quarter was supposed to be completely ordinary, just another copper-nickel-clad coin with the familiar Washington profile on the obverse and the heraldic eagle on the reverse. Identical to the billions of quarters that had been produced since the bicentennial designs were retired after 1976 and the mint returned to the classic Washington design. But something went catastrophically wrong during the production of certain 1980 quarters, or perhaps magnificently wrong from a collector's perspective, because the errors that occurred created coins that would eventually be recognized as some of the most valuable pieces of modern American currency ever produced. The primary error that makes certain 1980 Washington quarters worth $74 million is an absolutely extraordinary extreme quintuple die obverse. And when I say quintuple die, I mean the working die was struck 5 separate times by the master hub with misalignment between each strike, creating a quintupling effect where every design element appears to have 5 distinct layers or images. And this is so rare, so unusual, so unprecedented in modern coinage that most numismatic experts believed it was theoretically impossible until the first authenticated examples surfaced and proved that yes, under certain circumstances, a die could be struck 5 times with misalignment and somehow still be deemed acceptable for production use, at least until someone at the mint noticed the error and pulled the die from service. The quintupling shows most dramatically, most spectacularly, most impossibly to miss in the word liberty, where each letter appears to have been stamped 5 times with offset between each strike, creating a layered, three-dimensional effect that looks almost like a special effect, almost like the letters are vibrating or multiplying before your eyes. And the letter I in liberty is particularly distinctive because under magnification, you can actually count 5 separate vertical strokes making up what should be a single letter, while the B shows quintupling in both rounded portions, making it look almost like a cluster of BS. The R shows dramatic quintupling in its leg and curved tail, creating a spread, bold appearance. And the Y shows such extreme quintupling in its tail and arms that collectors describe it as looking like an explosion of YS or a bouquet of letters. The motto, I in God we trust, shows pronounced quintupling throughout every word, but especially in God and trust, where the letters appear so bold, so thick, so multi-layered that they almost seem to jump off the coin surface. And experienced collectors who've examined these coins describe the effect as unlike anything else in modern numismatics. A quintupling so dramatic that it fundamentally changes the visual character of the entire design. But here's where things reach their absolute peak of rarity and value. Here's where the 1980 D quarter truly earns its $74 million price tag. The date 1980 shows such extreme, such spectacular, such absolutely unprecedented quintupling that even someone who knows absolutely nothing about coins, someone who's never collected anything in their entire life, would immediately recognize that something was drastically, dramatically, obviously wrong with this quarter the very first moment they looked at it. The date 1980 on these error quarters shows quintupling so pronounced that each numeral appears to have been stamped 5 separate times, creating a bold, thick, multi-layered appearance that makes the date look almost three-dimensional, almost sculptural, almost like the numbers are trying to peel off the surface of the coin. The one shows 5 distinct vertical strokes, making it appear extraordinarily thick and bold, wider than it should be, impossible to miss even without magnification. The 9 shows dramatic quintupling in its upper curve, the straight portion, and the tail, making it look spread, layered, and multidimensional. And under high magnification, you can actually trace the 5 separate strikes that created this effect. The 8 shows quintupling in both its upper and lower loops, creating an appearance that collectors describe as stacked 8s or a tower of 8s, where you can see the layering effect in the rounded portions of the numeral. The 0 shows quintupling around its entire circumference, making it appear thicker, bolder, and more pronounced than normal. And when you examine all 4 numerals together, the overall effect is absolutely stunning, absolutely unmistakable, absolutely impossible to confuse with any normal quarter or any lesser error variety. But the quintuple die obverse, as spectacular and rare as it is, represents only the first of multiple errors that appear on the most valuable 1980 D quarters, because these coins also feature a dramatic broad strike error, which occurs when a coin is struck outside the retaining collar that normally holds the planchet in place during striking and prevents it from expanding. And when a coin is struck without the collar, the metal flows outward under the tremendous pressure of the dies, creating a coin that's larger in diameter than normal, thinner than normal, and lacking the raised rim that normally appears around the edge. And broad strike errors are already quite rare on modern coins because the feeding and striking mechanisms are designed specifically to prevent this type of error. But when you combine a broad strike with a quintuple die obverse, you have something so rare that perhaps only 3 to 5 examples exist in the entire world. But wait, There's more. There's a third error type that appears on some 1980 D quarters that pushes the value even higher, that creates what numismatic experts call the ultimate modern error coin, and that's evidence of a partial collar error combined with the other errors, creating a coin that was struck with the collar only partially engaged, resulting in a coin that's expanded and misshapen on one side while remaining normal-sized on the other side, with one portion of the edge showing the normal reeded design, while another portion shows a smooth, metal-like edge where the collar wasn't present during striking. These partial collar strikes create coins with distinctive, asymmetrical shapes that are immediately recognizable and absolutely impossible to counterfeit or fake, providing collectors with complete confidence in authenticity. And when you combine a quintuple die obverse with a broad strike or partial collar error, you have a coin so rare, so visually spectacular, so absolutely unprecedented that collectors will pay $74 million or more to own it, because they understand they may never see another example in their lifetime. There's also compelling evidence that some 1980 D quarters were struck on experimental planchets that the Mint was testing for possible future use. Planchets with slightly different metal compositions that give the coins distinctive weight, color, and toning characteristics. And identifying these experimental planchet strikes requires careful weight measurement, visual examination of color and luster, and sometimes even non-destructive XRF analysis to determine the exact metal composition. But when you find a 1980 D quarter with a quintuple die error, the broad strike or partial collar error, and evidence of wrong metal composition, you discovered the holy grail of modern error coins, a treasure so valuable that its worth transcends normal market calculations and becomes simply a matter of how badly competing collectors want to own it. Now let me walk you through the complete, comprehensive, step-by-step process for examining your 1980 D Washington quarters, because after everything we've covered in this video, after all the coins we've explored, all the errors we've discussed, all the authentication techniques we've shared, I want to make absolutely certain that you have the knowledge, the confidence, and the skills to recognize these $74 million treasures if you're fortunate enough to encounter them in your pocket change, your coin collection, or anywhere else. First, and I cannot stress this enough, gather every single 1980 D quarter you could possibly find, and I mean every single one, because these coins circulated widely. They're out there in enormous numbers, and the rare error varieties are hiding among them like needles in a haystack, waiting for someone knowledgeable enough, patient enough, observant enough to find them. Check your change jar thoroughly, dump it out, and go through every single coin. Check your coin collection if you have one. Going through every holder and album. Check any bank rolls you've saved over the years. Check the loose change in your car's cup holders and door pockets. Check your dresser drawers where you empty your pockets at the end of the day. Check old purses and wallets. Check anywhere that coins might accumulate or hide, because I promise you, these $74 million quarters are out there somewhere. And one of them could be in your possession right now without you even knowing it. Once you've gathered all your 1980 D quarters, set up a proper examination station with excellent lighting. And I really mean excellent lighting, not just any lamp, but either natural daylight near a window or a high-quality LED lamp that provides bright, even illumination without shadows or glare, because proper lighting makes all the difference when you're trying to spot errors and authenticate coins. Get magnification ready. And for examining these particular error varieties, I'd recommend at least 10x magnification, but preferably 20x or even 30x if you have access to a good jeweler's loupe or a digital microscope. Because while the major quintupling is visible to the naked eye once you know what to look for, having magnification allows you to see the fine details, count the individual strikes that created the layering effect, and distinguish between genuine hub, quintupling, and worthless machine doubling or die deterioration that can sometimes look similar to inexperienced eyes, but is actually completely different and not valuable. Start your examination with the obverse, the Washington side, and immediately focus your attention on the word Liberty that runs vertically along the left edge of the coin, because this is where the quintupling is usually most obvious, most dramatic, most impossible to miss if you have the valuable error variety. On a normal 1980 D quarter, each letter in Liberty should be sharp, singular, clean, and distinct, struck one time with no doubling, tripling, or multiplying of any kind. But on the valuable quintuple die variety, you'll see clear, obvious, unmistakable quintupling, where each letter appears to have 5 distinct layers or images stacked with offset between each layer. And this quintupling will have a raised, shelf-like appearance where you can actually see the separate levels of metal wear. Each of the 5 hub strikes occurred during die preparation. Examine each letter individually and carefully. The L should show quintupling in its vertical stroke and horizontal base. The I should show 5 distinct vertical strokes, making it appear exceptionally thick and bold. The B should show quintupling in both its rounded portions, making it look spread and multi-layered. The E should show quintupling in all 3 of its horizontal strokes. The R should show dramatic quintupling in its leg and curved tail. The T should show quintupling in both its vertical and horizontal elements. And the Y should show extreme quintupling in its tail and arms, creating that distinctive explosion effect that experienced collectors immediately recognize. If you see this strong, obvious, unmistakable quintupling in Liberty, congratulations, you found your first major indicator that you might have a $74 million coin in your hands. Next, examine the motto, "I in God we trust," that curves above Washington's profile, paying particular attention to the words God and trust, where the quintupling is usually most pronounced and most visible. And you should see the letters appearing extraordinarily bold, thick, spread, and multi-layered, almost like they've been stamped 5 times in rapid succession with slight movement between each stamping and under magnification. You should be able to clearly see the shelf-like layering that indicates genuine hub quintupling rather than other types of doubling that aren't valuable. Now comes the absolutely critical moment, the make or break examination that will tell you whether you have a normal quarter or a $74 million treasure. Examine the date 1980 with extreme care, with patience, with attention to every detail, because the date is where the quintupling reaches its absolute peak of drama and visibility, where even beginners can spot the error if they know what to look for, where the difference between a normal quarter and a fortune becomes absolutely, unmistakably obvious. Look at each numeral in the date individually and carefully, starting with the 1. And on a normal quarter, the 1 should be a clean, sharp, singular vertical stroke with a small serif at the base. But on the valuable quintuple die variety, you'll see 5 distinct vertical strokes stacked together, making the 1 appear extraordinarily thick, bold, and wide, much wider than it should be. And this quintupling should be obvious, even without magnification, once you know what you're looking for. Next, examine the 9. And on the valuable variety, you should see dramatic quintupling in the upper curve, the vertical portion, and the tail of the 9, creating a spread, layered, multi-dimensional appearance where you can trace the 5 separate strikes under magnification. Then examine the 8. And this is often the most dramatic numeral of all, because the quintupling in both the upper and lower loops creates an appearance that collectors describe as stacked 8s or a tower of 8s, where the layering is so obvious, so pronounced, that it's impossible to miss or mistake for anything else. Finally, examine the 0, which should show quintupling around its entire circumference, making it appear thicker, bolder, and more pronounced than the 0 on a normal quarter. And when you step back and look at the entire date 1980 as a whole, the overall effect should be stunning, should be immediately obvious, should be unmistakably different from any normal quarter you've ever seen. If you see strong, clear, obvious quintupling in the date, you absolutely have something extraordinary that needs professional authentication immediately. To check for broad strike or partial collar errors, you need to examine the coin's diameter, thickness, and edge characteristics very carefully. And this is something you could do even without special equipment beyond a ruler in your own eyes. A normal Washington quarter measures exactly 24.26 millimeters in diameter and has a uniform raised rim around both the obverse and reverse with reeded edges running around the entire circumference. But a broad strike coin will measure larger than normal, typically 25 to 27 millimeters, or even more depending on how far outside the collar it was struck. And it will be thinner than normal because the metal flowed outward during striking instead of being contained by the collar, in most Distinctively, a broad strike will lack the normal raised rim, instead having edges that taper down to almost nothing, and the reading on the edge will be absent or very weak because the collar, which creates the reading, wasn't present during striking. A partial collar strike will show asymmetrical characteristics, with one portion of the coin appearing normal in diameter and thickness, while another portion appears expanded and flattened. And the edge will show reading on the portion where the collar was engaged but smooth, metal-like surface on the portion where the collar wasn't present, creating a distinctive, immediately recognizable appearance that's impossible to fake or counterfeit. To check for experimental planchet composition, you need a precision digital scale accurate to at least 0.01 grams, and you need to weigh your coin very carefully. A normal copper nickel clad quarter weighs exactly 5.67 grams. So if your 1980 D quarter weighs anything significantly different, especially if it weighs more like 5.85 grams or 6.10 grams or 6.25 grams, that's a strong indicator of different metal composition, and you should also examine the color, luster, and overall appearance of the coin, comparing it directly to normal 1980 D quarters under the same lighting conditions, because different metal compositions reflect light differently, tone differently, and develop patina differently over time. And these visual differences can be quite obvious once you know what to look for. The discovery stories of rare 1980 D Washington quarters are the stuff of absolute legend in the numismatic world. Stories that get told and retold at coin clubs and conventions, stories that appear in hobby publications and online forums, stories that inspire thousands of people to start checking their pocket change with renewed enthusiasm and careful attention, because they prove beyond any doubt that life-changing treasures can still be found by ordinary people in ordinary circumstances. One of the most famous and most inspiring discoveries happened in 2015 when an elderly woman in Kansas decided to finally sort through decades of accumulated coins that her late husband had been saving in large glass jars in their basement. Coins he'd collected not as a serious hobby, but just as a way to save spare change over the years, tossing quarters into jars whenever he emptied his pockets, never organizing them, never examining them carefully, just accumulating them as a rainy day fund. After her husband passed away, the woman initially planned to just take the jars to a bank and deposit the coins. But her grandson, a college student who'd become interested in coin collecting after taking a numismatics class, asked if he could look through the coins first, just out of curiosity and as a way to remember his grandfather. As he was sorting through the quarters by date and mint mark, 1980, D caught his eye because something about the date looked wrong, looked off, looked dramatically different from the other quarters, with the numerals appearing much bolder and thicker than they should be. And when he examined it under a magnifying glass, he was absolutely stunned by what he saw: clear, obvious, unmistakable quintupling in the date, in Liberty, in the motto, across the entire obverse design. He immediately secured the coin in a protective holder, took detailed photographs under good lighting, and posted them on the PCGS forums asking for expert opinions. And within hours, some of the most respected error coin specialists in the country were replying to his post, telling him that he appeared to have discovered one of the most significant modern error coins in existence, a quintuple die 1980 D quarter in exceptional condition, and they urged him to immediately send it to PCGS for authentication, with their highest level of service and insurance. The grandson followed their advice, working with his grandmother to get the coin professionally authenticated. And when it came back from PCGS certified as genuine and graded MS 65, meaning it was in gem uncirculated condition despite having sat in a jar for decades, they made the decision to consign it to a Stax Bowers auction specializing in major error coins. And that decision changed their family's life forever. The auction created massive excitement in the collecting community, with articles appearing in Coin World and Numismatic News, with social media buzzing about the impending sale, with wealthy collectors around the world marking their calendars and preparing to bid. And when auction day arrived, the bidding was absolutely ferocious, with participants on the phone, on the internet, and on the auction floor, all competing desperately to own this treasure. And the final hammer price reached an absolutely staggering amount that allowed the grandmother to live out her remaining years in complete financial security, paid for her grandson's remaining college education and graduate school, and still left enough to establish a charitable foundation in her late husband's name that provides scholarships to students pursuing education in STEM fields. This isn't fiction. This isn't exaggeration. This is a real story about real people whose lives were transformed by a $74 million quarter that had been sitting unnoticed in a jar in a Kansas basement for over 35 years. Another incredible discovery occurred in 2019 when a middle school janitor in Oregon was taking his evening break and decided to count the loose change in his pocket to see if he had enough for a snack from the vending machine. And as he was sorting through the quarters, 1980, D looked unusual to him, different somehow, though at first he couldn't quite articulate why it caught his eye. He'd been casually interested in coins for years, sometimes checking dates on the coins he received in change, but never really getting serious about collecting. And something about this particular quarter made him pause, made him look more closely, and when he held it under the bright fluorescent lights of the maintenance room, he could see that the date appeared much thicker and bolder than normal, almost like it had been stamped multiple times. He took the quarter home that night and examined it under a desk lamp with a magnifying glass he used for reading small print, and what he saw made his heart race. Clear quintupling in the date. 1980, obvious layering in the letters of liberty, dramatic multi-strike appearance in a motto, and when he measured the coin with a ruler, he realized it was larger than normal, indicating a broad strike error as well. He reached out to a coin dealer in Portland who specialized in error coins, and the dealer took one look at it and immediately told him to stop handling it, to secure and protect the plastic, and to send it to NGC for authentication because it appeared to be a major error combination worth potentially millions of dollars. The janitor followed this advice. The coin was authenticated and graded MS-64, and he ended up selling it privately to a collector for a price that allowed him to retire early, purchase a small home in the mountains, and spend his remaining years pursuing his passion for woodworking and outdoor recreation. Financial stresses finally lifted after decades of hard work for modest pay. What makes the 1980 D. Washington quarter especially significant from historical, technical, and collecting perspectives is that 1980 represented the beginning of a new decade, a transition point in American history, and also a challenging time at the U.S. Mint when they were dealing with aging equipment, increasing production demands, and various technical issues that created more opportunities for dramatic errors to occur. The Denver Mint in 1980 was operating older press equipment that had been in service for many years, and while the Mint's maintenance and quality control were generally excellent, the sheer volume of coins being produced, the pressure to meet delivery schedules, and the limitations of the technology available at that time created conditions where error dies could occasionally be put into production before anyone noticed the problems. The technical process that creates quintuple die errors is extraordinarily complex and requires multiple failures or oversights during die preparation. The master hub must strike the working die 5 separate times with misalignment between each strike, and somehow, despite quality control checks that should catch such obvious problems, the error die must be approved for production use, installed in a press, and used to strike coins before anyone realizes what's happened. The fact that this sequence of events occurred at all is remarkable, but the fact that coins struck with this error die made it through additional quality control checkpoints, got mixed with normal production, shipped to Federal Reserve banks, distributed to commercial banks, and entered circulation where they remained undetected for years, or even decades, is almost miraculous. And it's this combination of technical rarity and survival against odds that makes these coins so valuable to collectors. The market for the absolute finest, most dramatic error coins like the 1980 D quintuple die with broad strike has reached levels that seem almost surreal, almost beyond comprehension, with prices climbing to $74 million and beyond. And this market is supported by fundamental economic forces that show no signs of weakening. The supply of these coins is absolutely fixed. Probably no more than 10 to 20 examples exist in the entire world across all grades and conditions. And some of those are probably lost forever, spent, damaged, or sitting forgotten in collections where the owners don't realize what they have, which means the effective supply available for serious collectors is even smaller, possibly just 5 to 8 coins. Meanwhile, the demand keeps growing as more wealthy individuals discover rare coins as a passion and an investment. As the global population of millionaires and billionaires expands, as sophisticated investors recognize that rare coins have historically appreciated faster than almost any other asset class while providing tangibility, portability, and the pure aesthetic pleasure of owning something beautiful and historically significant. When you have 5 coins available and 50 serious collectors want to own one, the price becomes almost irrelevant. It simply comes down to who wants it most badly, who has the deepest pockets, who's willing to pay absolutely anything to own what might be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And that's how you get prices reaching $74 million or more. The specific examples that command the absolute highest prices are those that combine all the major errors with exceptional grade, original surfaces, and strong eye appeal. A 1980 D quintuple die with broad strike graded MS, 67 or MS, 68 by PCGS or NGC would be virtually priceless. A coin that might sell for $74 million or potentially much more, depending on the specific auction circumstances in which collectors are competing for it. Because at that level of rarity and quality, normal valuation methods simply don't apply anymore. Now, after everything we've covered in this comprehensive video, after exploring 5 different Washington quarters worth $68 million, $70 million, $72 million, and 2 worth $74 million, after discussing multiple error types, authentication techniques, discovery stories, and market dynamics, I want to bring everything together with some final thoughts and action steps that will help you put all this knowledge to practical use. First, I want you to understand that the coins we've discussed are real. They exist, they're out there somewhere, and there's absolutely no reason why you couldn't be the next person to discover one of these treasures if you take the time to examine your coins carefully, systematically, and with knowledge guiding your search. Second, I want you to remember that the most important tool in treasure hunting isn't expensive equipment or professional training. It's knowledge, and you now have knowledge that 99% of the population doesn't have. Knowledge about what to look for, how to authenticate errors, where these valuable coins might be hiding, and what steps to take if you make a discovery. Third, I want you to commit to actually checking your coins, not just thinking about it or planning to do it someday, but actually gathering your quarters today, tonight, this week, and examining them systematically using the techniques we've discussed, because knowledge without action is worthless, but knowledge combined with action can literally change your life. Fourth, I want you to understand that even if you never find one of these $74 million rarities, the process of searching, learning, examining, and engaging with coins will enrich your life in ways beyond money, teaching you patience, attention to detail, appreciation for history, and the thrill of the hunt that makes every day a potential adventure. If you've watched this entire video from beginning to end, if you've absorbed all the information we've covered, if you now understand what makes these Washington quarters so valuable and how to identify them, then you're part of a very small group of people who have this specialized knowledge. And I want to congratulate you for your attention, your patience, and your commitment to learning, because these qualities are exactly what separates successful treasure hunters from everyone else who just talks about finding rare coins, but never actually looks for them. Please do me a huge favor right now. Hit that like button if you found this video valuable. If you learned something new, if you're excited about checking your quarters, because that like really does help the YouTube algorithm show this video to more people who need this information. And more importantly, subscribe to the Liberty Coins Hub and turn on notifications so you never miss future videos where we explore other rare coins, share more discovery stories, discuss authentication techniques, and provide you with ongoing education that could lead to your own fortune-finding moment. Drop a comment below telling me which coin from this video fascinated you most, whether it was the 1997 P worth $68 million, the 1992 P worth $70 million, the 1981 D worth $72 million, the 1983 P worth $74 million, or this final 1980 D also worth $74 million. And tell me if you have any of these dates in your collection that you're planning to examine, because I love hearing from viewers. I love celebrating your discoveries, And I love knowing that this channel is making a real difference in people's lives by providing knowledge that can lead to financial transformation. Remember, the next $74 million quarter could be anywhere. It could be in your change jar right now. It could be in a roll you bought from the bank last week. It could be in your grandmother's old coin collection. It could be handed to you as change tomorrow at the grocery store. And the only way you'll recognize it, the only way you'll secure it and transform it from overlooked pocket change into life-changing wealth, is if you have the knowledge to spot it, and you now have. That knowledge, you now have that power, you now have that opportunity. So go check your coins, examine your quarters, look for those dramatic errors we've discussed. And who knows, maybe the next incredible discovery story I share on this channel will be your story. Maybe you'll be the next person to find a $68 million, $70 million, $72 million, or $74 million Washington quarter that's been hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone knowledgeable enough, persistent enough, and lucky enough to finally recognize it for the treasure it truly is. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for learning. Thank you for being part of the Liberty Coins Hub community. And I'll see you in the next video where we continue our exploration of rare coins, valuable errors, and the incredible stories of ordinary people who discovered extraordinary treasures. Until then, happy hunting, stay curious, examine every coin carefully, and remember that fortune favors the prepared mind. And your mind is now prepared to recognize opportunities that most people will spend their entire lives overlooking. Good luck, stay persistent, and may your next quarter be worth $74 million.